Speaking on behalf also of ARP National, I'd just like to preface this first by all individuals should have a range of safe, accessible, dependable, affordable transportation options that enhance mobility, enable independent living, and facilitate employment opportunities and foster social engagement. This is from the ARP National Policy. The question I have is this. It is a concern of AARP and some of the other social service agencies. Funding for elderly transportation services, both day and evening, should be increased so that, at a minimum, it is in proportion with the projected population growth of the state's older residents, as well as the funding, overall funding for transportation.
If I could, Dan, thank you for your comment, and to just follow up on it. When I talk about increasing public transit, when I use the phrase public transit, and Dan has helped me clarify, I mean, kind of traditional like bus or subway, but also paratransit for those who are elderly or disabled or don't have their own vehicles. All of us will get to a point in our life where we're not going to be able to drive a car, and we shouldn't be. And yet, we will want to have options to be mobile, and those tend to be options, either vans or buses or some form of paratransit that can be used. The Transportation Change Fund, with the 75% increase in the public transit and rail, includes funds that can be used not just for the traditional bus or light rail or subway, but also for paratransit options. And that is very important because we have an awful lot of Virginians who need transportation options other than that single occupancy vehicle with a full tank of gas. And I appreciate the AARP's advocacy and lobbying for that. Other questions? Please.
When you're driving 95 south, thank you, Cheryl Collins. When you're driving 95 south and you're leaving DC area and the interchange for HOV and 95 right there, what would be any plans in the future to reduce that 81% congestion that you can sit there for 3 or 4 hours?
Yes. In Northern Virginia, there are a couple of things that we're doing, but you've asked specifically about kind of north-south and what are we going to do there. Right now, there's an HOV set of lanes that goes about as far as like Dale City or maybe one exit south to Dumfries. Our goal is to build in that median in 95 all the way to Fredericksburg an HOV lane. And obviously, as people exit at Stafford and exit, Bettakia and further down, you would have more options. If you build more lanes in the median, you're going to give people more options to travel. Those lanes will be hot lanes, so they will be at a cost. You'll be able to drive on them for free if you have the HOV in. Public transit vehicles will be able to use them for free, but we'll also have some ability for individuals who are in it by themselves, if they pay, and the fee would be higher during days of congestion, they could drive on it as well. So more lane capacity and some congestion pricing should be able to spread out some of that north-south congestion is our hope. The second thing we're trying to do in that corridor is more robust service on that Virginia Railway Express. So today, the Virginia Railway Express runs a commuter line DC to Fredericksburg and DC to Manassas. It's about 15,000 folks a day, but we're seeing a huge demand for increased rail service in that corridor. So we want to have more cars and more reliable service so that we can take even more people onto that rail option rather than on the road, and that will help with congestion as well.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Herbert Bragg, Director of Public Affairs at Hopewell.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about Fort Lee, expansion of Fort Lee.
Yes.
What impact, as you well know, Fort Lee is going to expand, especially 09 through 11. What, if any, plans does the state have to work with the federal government in reducing some of the congestion there that may occur as a result of this Fort Lee expansion? Thank you.
I may want to let my Secretary of Transportation, Pierce Homer, deal with that directly, and I guess I got to give you my mic.
I'll just yell, Governor.
Okay.
There are 4 minimal projects for the Fort Lee rack relocation. If you look on the website that came out Friday with the 6-year program, we were able to fund the largest and most expensive of those improvements, and there are 3 that are still left unfunded in that. Obviously, if there are more revenues, those would be a top priority. And we're dealing with the BRAC issue in Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, just as we are here at Forkley. So we were able to make some progress on the worst situation with the Forkley, but we still have a ways to go.
Okay. And that's kind of what we're seeing at Belvoir and in Hampton Roads too, that part of the 6-year planning effort is when the BRAC decisions were announced in the places where we were going to have more people, which was good news. I mean, we all celebrated that announcement about Fort Lee here, but then the issue is making sure we have the infrastructure we need, and we think at a minimum we've got to do these 4 key projects. Unless we come up with a solution to this problem, we'll do 1 of the 4, the other 3 won't be done, and the traffic problems would worsen. Please.
Yes, I'm Steve Draper, Sheriff, City of Martinsville, also the, thank you, First Vice President, Virginia Sheriff Association. I'd like to first bring regrets from Sheriff Anderson here from Hopewell. He had a prior commitment, couldn't be here tonight, but I'd like to just state, as far as the Sheriff's Association is concerned, our hats are off to you. We commend you for trying to work on the transportation issues, and then good luck working with the General Assembly. We hope y'all come out with good things. But I do need to kind of toot the horn for the governor on some of the things that this governor has done for the sheriffs and law enforcement. He's been so supportive of sheriffs and law enforcement in his tenure as governor. I feel like there's a couple of issues I just need to bring to everybody's attention. Number one, this is the governor that introduced the retirement plan, LEO, which is a law enforcement supplement, hazardous duty pay retirement for deputy sheriffs. This is the governor that brought that to the General Assembly and had it done this year. And we, the Sheriff's Association, have been trying to get that done for several years, and he's the one that put it in place for us. He's also as good as his word. He promised the sheriffs when he was in a candidate for governor that he would not cut budgets for law enforcement if things got tight, and he didn't. This last October, as you know, most of you know, a lot of budgets were reduced, and he did not reduce the sheriff's budgets. He kept our budgets the way we were so we could continue to operate our law enforcement, our jails, and our courts. He's also been real instrumental in keeping his promise as far as he did cut 599 funds, which, as you know, some of you know, is localities funds for law enforcement. Also reduced the state police budget, but he didn't reduce the sheriff's budgets. Also, there was a freeze that just went into effect on hiring for the state employees. Sheriffs, he delayed that freeze until July 1 so we could get all of our deputies in the retirement plan, and for that we really thank you. But I guess one of the things that I wanted to say was the big thing is he put $14 million back in this budget, in the 2008 budget, for per diems for jails, which some of you may not know, but the jails get paid for each person we house in our jails, whether it be the regional jails or the local jails. The state pays us for the people we hold. $14 million was put back into that budget that goes right back directly to the localities by this governor. In tight times, if that had not been put back in, it would have been a tough thing trying to get in. So for all that, we do thank you, Mr. Governor.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. Thank all of you. Let me just say first, Steve, I really appreciate you being here and the support of the sheriffs has been very meaningful. And I have done those things because I support law enforcement, but I've also done them for another reason. I used to be a mayor. When the state doesn't put into the sheriffs the funds that we need, the sheriffs go to the local government and they got to get it out of property tax revenues. Sheriffs are kind of a combined, state-local operation. So when we don't do what we need to do, it's not just as if, there's no pain or anything. No, it ends up coming out of local property tax revenues, which either, hurts folks here in greater property taxes, or it means that locals cut other services to try to do what they need to share. So we'll continue to work well together. I appreciate your support, and I also appreciate your guys' solid understanding for how a transportation system has to be a strong one for public safety purposes. Other issues or questions? Yes, please, in red.
I wanted to comment that 95, I identify South as a classic example of poor land use decision making. Every time they widen the road, more subdivisions would pop up, and you'd see more and more signs, and so the congestion has just gotten worse and worse no matter what lanes they've added. And I wondered, and of course you pointed that out, the connection between land use decisions and transportation. Now, I wondered with the energy efficiency block grants that they're working on at the federal level, would that be a way of maybe giving incentives to localities to implement real measures toward decreasing the sprawl, the transportation disasters that you end up because of sprawling developments and that type of thing. Ones that implement ordinances that would be anti-sprawl perhaps would be the ones that would get more of the energy efficiency block grants.
Possible. But let me talk about the big picture topic. So the question is, if we can do things that reduce sprawl or create opportunities for people to live closer to where they work, go to school, etc., reduce vehicle miles traveled, for example, then it will help deal with this issue. And there are some federal funds subject to a federal energy block grant thing that has been kicking around in Congress that we can use to promote energy efficiency and better practices. But we're also trying to do some things at the state level. So I've just formed by executive order a week ago what I call a community development subcabinet. And it's a group of my cabinet officials who are charged with looking at all the discretionary revenue sources that the state hands out, community development block grant monies, for example, and try to make sure that we're handing them out to projects that reduce sprawl and reduce waste rather than encourage them. I don't have the statistic off the top of my head. Pierce may be able to remember this one with precision. But here's something real interesting. In the last 20, 30 years, the population of Virginia has grown by a certain percent, but the vehicle miles traveled by the Virginia population has grown by like 2 or 3 times what the population growth has been. And do you remember the precise magnitude?
The VMT is about 75% population, as I recall, is 10-15%.
Yeah, so population growth went up 10-15%. Vehicle miles traveled went up 75%. People are living farther and farther away from work. In Northern Virginia, it's very acute. Housing prices are so high that if you're a sheriff or a school teacher in Arlington, you're not going to be able to buy a property in Arlington. You go out to Western Loudon, Fauquier, you have people driving into D.C. from West Virginia because they drive until they can find a house they can buy, and then they're back and forth, and now at $4 a gallon, that's just a killer. So part of what we need to do, whether it's using these federal funds or using the state dollars we have now, is better strategies to have, less sprawl, more compact development. The legislature has worked on a number of those in the last couple of years in some really good ways. I think we have more to do, but I do think everybody is now realizing, some of the ways we used to plan were wasteful. So let's have a different set of principles that we use to decide how to plan now.
Yes.
What's
2 questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me come to this gentleman since he hasn't asked one, and then I'll come back.
Governor, I'd like to apologize for probably one of the problems we're in right now. My name is Russell Garrison. I live in Colonial Heights, and I was president of Road Builders in 1969 1985, and Governor Belize came in 1986. And we talked to the governor and got a price index on gasoline at that point in time. Our gas tax today would have been about 32 cents, so a gradual increase, and everything had been home free. So I apologize for that. I worked here, and I built probably 90% of the roads around the area, and I could relate. Time goes on, and have many things. You came over a bridge probably at night, 42 years old. You came to Petersburg. Winston Churchill is 60 years old, so it goes on and on. You have 3 projects in the criteria which we need sorely. I can answer the gentleman's questions back in the back. We did get a ramp in Temple Avenue, federally funded, and Secretary Homer can tell you, I hope the intersection on 6th Street to Fort Lee is probably federally funded, $2 million the federal government probably doing that project. So we're getting a lot of help from the federal government on these projects, so hopefully with 40,000 people on that thing.
Well, Mr. Garrison, you raised a good point. So it is the case that when the transportation funding was done in '86, if instead of 17.5 cents a gallon, it was you set it at a percentage, or you set it 17.5 cents a gallon, it will be adjusted upward by the inflation index, we probably wouldn't be standing here today. But you guys did a great thing in '86 because it hadn't been addressed for a long time. You never get everything you want, and it's never perfect. And the purpose of probably you wouldn't have contemplated in 1986 that you would have done it, and then they wouldn't have adjusted it for 20 years. You probably thought the legislature might have come back every 10 years to do it. Let me tell you something that Mr. Garrison knows, and you'll immediately grab if you haven't thought of it already. 17.5 cents a gallon gas tax since 1986. What's happened since 1986? People have started to build a lot of vehicles that get better and better gas mileage. So if you have a flat gas tax at 17.5 cents a gallon, as fuel efficiency goes up, it's actually a declining revenue source. But construction costs haven't declined. They've been doing this. So one of the weird things about the gas tax is we hope the nation invests in better and better technology to drive miles per gallon up even more. Electric plug-in hybrids that don't even use gas or don't use much gas. That would be great for the economy. But it will make the gas tax revenues continue to be tough. So that's one of the challenges that we have in trying to figure out the right solution, is that leaning too heavily on the gas tax at a time when all these new technologies are coming on board, you're kind of chasing after revenue that's running away from you as you're doing it.
Governor, one other point, we have a big problem, as John Edwards said in his speech last week about a big wall. We have a wall in the House of Delegates. It's going to be very hard to get over that wall or break through it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The challenge has been, and again, the challenge has been in the House. The Senate will pass plans next week, a plan or plans, I feel fairly confident, to deal with this challenge. The issue will be, will the House pass one? If each side passes one, they'll be different, but at least there will be something to work with. As you all know, it's like at the family or in the business or in the neighborhood or in government, everybody's got an idea. Can you come together and compromise? It's hard to have a compromise if one side has a plan and one side doesn't. If each side has a plan they'll put out there and willing to compromise, we may well find an answer to this. Yes, in the second row, and I'll come back to you. I'm going to give the first timers cracks before the second time.
Governor, I have a question to ask you. I was for this giving all the money to the schools from the lottery.
Mm-hmm.
But since we're having all these problems with transportation, why can't we get 5 or 10% of the lottery money for transportation? Because our children are traveling on these roads on 460, 295, 285, Route 10, and other highways, and even these little country roads. And to me, you will still be benefiting to the schools because these buses are traveling with the children on these roads.
Good question, very good question. My concern about doing that would be, well, first, we passed a constitutional amendment in the late 1990s that basically says the lottery money just goes to education. That was the way it was advertised when we passed the lottery, but then the money was kind of being used here or there. So then we went back and we guaranteed that those monies would just go to education, So we don't really have the ability to take those lottery dollars and put them into transportation now because they've been blocked for education. The other reason, even if we could, I would be a little concerned about it, is we can measure our per pupil expenditures on education and compare it to every other state. We're not spending more than the average on education. We're actually, in many instances, teacher salaries and others spending less than the average. And I would worry about taking education dollars away. Even for something important like transportation, I don't think we should reduce education spending. One of the things that, a challenge we're having right now, you mentioned school buses. Anybody running school buses is having a hard time meeting their budget because they were planning on gas at $3 a gallon and now it's at $4 a gallon. State troopers, sheriffs, we all had budgets for these basic services, but then as gas prices go up, everybody's budgets are getting squeezed. And so I would not be inclined to squeeze the kind of like educational and other priorities to find a transportation solution. I think we ought to keep finding just specific revenues for transportation and kind of keeping those two budgets separate. That would be my opinion.
But I think 5% is a little small. 95%. I think 5% would not hurt them.
I understand that. I understand your point. I feel like at the level per pupil we are at right now, even that, and I view, again, this is my opinion, everybody could have different. I view our educational investments as the single most powerful ones we make because, like the Rolls-Royce deal that we got here, recently, that's going to be a great economic opportunity in this region. We got that deal because of our education system. We competed against Singapore and Georgia, and we won, and it wasn't the tax, it was that we had an education system that they felt more confidence in. And I worry about, would we be hurting ourselves if we started to trim that back. Starting the pink shirt right now.
I'm Tommy Wells. I'm a Hopewell resident, and I'm also chairman of Kaine District Area Agency on Aging. And like the other gentleman said, we had transportation problems with Crater because our costs are increasing dramatically to transport these senior citizens. And this past year, we had actually a decrease in funds that came from the state. And if we go back from the last 10 years, we've actually had cuts for the last 10 years. And we don't get an increase each year with inflation involved, you're actually getting a decrease in the funds that you get. So we're really in a position that we are in a hurting position, trying to provide the services for the seniors in this region.
Thank you. Let me, ma'am, right here.
Anna Mickens, I serve as mayor for the city of Petersburg and also chair of the Tri-Cities Area MPO. Whatever plan is put in place, Governor, and we do expect a plan, I believe the citizens and this Commonwealth deserves a transportation plan. The expectation is, number one, that it will be long-term and that it will be sustainable and it will be something that we could understand. Hopefully, everyone would be able to deal with a plan that deals with the maintenance deficit. In terms of the off-ramp that was open this morning, if you listen to the Temple Avenue, if you listen to Mayor John Woods, that was a 40-year project. And being 40 years, we looked at the fact that it provided safety and convenience access for the huge increase in user ridership going to Fort Lee and at 95 access. But the expectation is that we would also look to have a southbound ramp. We can't afford a 40-year wait because of the type of safety that we have. For the MPO, for the localities that make up our MPO, the years that we worked dealt with the fact that we put aside some of the local projects so that we were able to put the critical BRAC initiatives on the table up front. And we still have 17 projects in the hopper. We're going to be working with some. When we looked at the cuts for the 6-year plan and the 43% cut was introduced, then behind that, our MPO took an 89% cut. And that was a very difficult hit because many of the projects dealt with the 95 corridor, specific Reed's Road, those types of projects. But for all of us, the expectation is that we have to have something that is sustainable. And we have to have something that will give us a viable 6-year plan that will stand, that we don't have to worry about in the middle of the plan. We have huge cuts. And there is no way for survival for us in terms of the transportation needs. Petersburg specifically is the other transit provider, other than Richmond. And even with the cooperation that we have with Richmond, we are now coming under the burden of what to do in order to provide the needs of senior citizens, to provide the needs of the workforce, to provide the needs of everyone who cannot deal with that $4 gas cost. So for transit providers, especially for Richmond and Petersburg, what are the types of things that we can look forward to?
Well, Mayor Mickens is part of a group, the Virginia First Cities, that is the older cities in Virginia, and they have a particular focus on transit. One piece of the bill that the legislature passed last year that was a good piece, that still stands, is taking some of the state's recordation tax money and earmarking it into public transit, about $45 million a year. That will start to kick in this year, and that will be some enhanced funding for transit systems. The combination of that plus this transportation change fund will really enable us to do more public transit rail and these transit issues for the seniors and others who can't afford it. But I very much appreciate your comment. Mayor Mickens was mentioning the MPO. For those of you that aren't local officials, MPO is Metropolitan Planning Organization. Those are the organizations, committees in each region that try to plan and prioritize what are the transportation projects. And there's an MPO in this region that has done that. But how deep we get on the project list is purely dependent on the amount of dollars we have. And I don't want you to have to wait 40 years to do the rest of that project either. So thank you for that question. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take one more question here. My voice is starting to run out. Then I'm going to come back to Ray. Then I'm going to stay and just visit. If some of you just want to come up and ask a question right here, I'll stay for 10 minutes or so and do that. So please.
Governor, my name is Nathan Eastwood, and I have a small business here in Petersburg. And I travel a lot. I go about, say, 10,000 miles a month, for example. One of the questions that I have for you in regards to if this is in place, this would basically, for myself, of course, it wouldn't be harmful. However, since this is across the board, it affects our seniors, and it affects other members of the community that really don't travel the roads as much. Would I be correct in saying that?
Well, it's those who have vehicles would pay a $10 a year more. So, and that is a $10 whether you're driving a '67 Beetle or a Lexus. So it's a flat fee. So, but the fee, the 1% for auto title if you buy vehicles, lower income people tend to buy vehicles less. They tend to try to keep vehicles longer and deal with repairs. So that tax would fall more on higher end folks who buy more vehicles. The sales tax in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, once you don't apply it to food and medicine, in my view, that is a better tax than some others. For example, I thought about the gas tax, which is, from a policy standpoint, that's a user fee. But the problem is with gas prices being so high right now, and a lot of places in the state don't have public transit, so you have to, it's a gas, a gallon of gas is like a necessity. I decided I didn't want to put a tax on that. So the basic, and then the other one is sale of property. And again, that tends to hit the higher income individuals. So I tried to structure the whole package so that it would not have a heavy burden on people at the lower end of the scale.
Well, the last part of that slide showed that it actually was not going to work, for example, in 2014.
Yeah, on the maintenance
So
side.
we would have to come right back to the same issue in a few years. Am I correct?
If that forecast is accurate on the maintenance deficit, in 2014 we have about a $50 million deficit instead of the $600 million that we would have without it. So you're right, you might have to come back and fix it. I don't think we will ever again be able to do transportation and then not come back to it for 25 years. Everything else in the budget, there's nothing else in the budget that we do that on. Now, in 2014, maybe we will be heavily over into rail and public transit and things will be different enough that some of the other maintenance needs would be taken care of differently. The world might have changed enough by then that who knows what it'll look like. But I feel confident in saying that the legislature will not be able to leave this one alone for 22 years. Because I just think transportation is a big enough issue that it's going to require some care and feeding more often than that. Well, let me say this. A question here, and then I'll come back to you, and I'll come back to Ray.
My name is Wayne Wall. I'm a councilman-elect in Hopewell. I worked in the local industry for 40 years and was a union leader there. I was wondering if there's an initiative from the state, not necessarily getting more dollars for roads, but to cut down on injury by creative scheduling, 4-day work weeks, cutting off people out to be on the road as much, working at home, things like that.
Yeah, very good question. So did everybody hear is the mic loud enough to hear the question? Wayne said, how about instead of more roads, on the construction side, can we do more 4-day work week, keep people off the roads, flexible times, etc.? And I think that is a good part. Part of what we would like to use that transportation change fund for is that 75% that's for rail or public transit would also be to encourage ride sharing, telework. One of my state agencies, the tax department, about 60% of the state employees in that department telework at least one day and work from home. That enables us to reduce congestion. It also enables us to put some jobs in places like Danville and others that need jobs, rather than just have them all in Richmond, because if you have a good internet connection, you can work from there. So it enables us to spread opportunities around. And I think we ought to be trying to look at ways we can give incentives to employers, private employers, to do the same thing. So again, whether it's flexible schedules or telework or ride sharing or things like that, we ought to do it. A lot of employers, will pay for parking for their employees. So they'll pay the monthly rental for parking, but they won't give an employee a bus pass, which is usually cheaper than the rental for a monthly parking space. Well, why don't we, offer either? And so there are things like that we need to all be thinking about in a different way, especially with gas prices being so low. Let me just say this real quick, and then we'll go last question. I really appreciate everybody coming tonight. You all got a million things to do, and you could have done anything else tonight, but the fact that you come out means that you care about this issue in your community, and I appreciate it. This is the 19th town hall meeting that I've done, and they sometimes kind of wear you out. But when I come and then we have a really good discussion like this, I realize, wow, I really like these. I got a lot of energy. And I think the citizens get this stuff, Sometimes we make it so complicated in the legislature. The citizens kind of get this. If you want improvements, you got to be willing to pay for it. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, well, got to be willing to invest. But I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and being willing to share your thoughts. What we're doing is I'm writing the bill right now. I have a plan, but I have to write the bill to make the plan real. And what I've been hearing in these town hall meetings has helped me write the bill better than I would have written it had I not done the town hall meeting. So I appreciate that. So we'll go final question, and I'm going to stay around and visit for a little bit, please.
I'm going to be Dan Johnson, private citizen this time. What I want to ask, and I want the Lord to call for his foresight in the proposing of the Central Virginia Transit Authority.
Yeah.
And I think that we are beginning to see in the state of Virginia that transportation is not an individual county or city problem, but it is of a regional proportion. And AARP does have this saying, divided we fail. And when I think we see the releasing of this feeling of sovereignty of each entity within the counties and all, and there becomes more of a regional concept and perception, then we're going to see a greater reduction of these problems of transportation. What is the governor, as well as I hope in working with the legislature, pursuing and emphasizing a more of a regional addressing and approach to transportation?
Well, I'll count that as a question, but also just as a challenge, kind of like, hey, governors, you're looking at this, emphasize regional solutions and not just each city or county. The part of this plan that is Hampton Roads and Northern Virginia regional plans, I think is a good precedent. So the reason that we're doing those is because the legislators in those regions have said, okay, we need to do something as a region. That means other regions of the state, if their legislative delegations come forward and say, hey, we need to do something as a region too, there will be a precedent for doing that. So I actually do view, and I will say, the regional plans were not my idea, that was other legislators, but they convinced me, okay, that might have some real merit. And one of the merits is establishing this precedent of more regional cooperation. Delegate Hall put on the table, well, gosh, if there's going to be a regional plan in Nova and Hampton Roads, what about Richmond? And the legislators in the Richmond area will be talking about, well, is the time right for it this year, or would it be another time? But clearly, once you have regional plans in place in Nova and Hampton Roads, the precedent is established when we would be ready to look at something like that, when the need would be sufficient here in this Central Virginia region, the precedent would be established to allow it. Let me again say thanks. And many folks in the kind of front sections around here are local government officials who come, and some have asked questions. They care deeply about this. To all of you who come out tonight, I appreciate it. To those here with me, do I have one more?
Yeah, he has a question, Governor.
Okay, good. He's had it up. Had your hand up for a while. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, please. what did my mom or dad used to say around the dinner? There's always room for one more, around the dinner table. So there's always room for one more question.
Governor Kaine, thank you very much. My name is Henry Parker. I serve as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors of Prince George County. I have with me this evening our Vice Chairman, Mr. Jerry Skowski, Supervisor Bill Robinson, and our County Administrator, John Kaine. I'm a 69-year resident of the Commonwealth, proud of our state, proud of all of our accomplishments. I want to personally thank you for coming out into our community and addressing the #1 problem. I am the recipient of 27 six-year plans, which have generated into 27 60-year plans. I like your package. I did hear most recently in your conversation here the word that I've been looking for, earmark. I do believe that the citizens in the Commonwealth will help sell your transportation program if those words could be incorporated. I do believe that we all are serious. I travel Northern Virginia and I travel the Hampton Roads area. I'm a retailer, and by the way, this is a good chance to thank you publicly for some common sense in letting us sell our gas at half-gallon price so we can collect gas tax and stay in business. Some further comments. Having been a resident of the Commonwealth all these years, I've observed many things in our transportation, as well as having traveled throughout the states in our great nation. When I was a little boy growing up, we had a toll on the James River Bridge. We built a new bridge and did away with the tolls. When I was a little boy, 16 years old, we had a toll on the Jamestown Scotland Ferry. Now we have a free ride. And I believe I heard you mention a few moments ago there's no such thing as a free lunch. I believe that the people in the Commonwealth, not every bridge and every stream, but I do believe when we have major facilities being erected, like such as the bridges, most recently in the West Point area, what was the demand for that? Recreation, vacation. I believe that you have a good plan. I sincerely do. The only thing that I would add to it and get run over town about is probably 2 or 3 cent gallon tax on the gasoline. Because if I refer to this in retail a lot when I have problems. And I don't want to pick on any one industry, but I always use this phrase. When they stop making Newports and they stop making Budweiser, I'll listen to your problem. We want to talk economics. And everyone is entitled to whatever they do with their life if they're law-abiding citizens. So I think there's a priority in each of us that we have to accept. If we want, I'm 69, I won't be here for grandchildren and great-grandchildren, whatever have you, of all these nice people. But everyone, as you mentioned earlier this evening, they have different interests and different things that we could be doing this evening. But we were fortunate enough to come to hear your plan. And I'm not a politician, but politics got us into this situation. Now, politics has to get us out. It's clear and simple, and we have to bite the bullet, whatever it may be. The transportation issue is a very serious issue, and you addressed it very nicely concerning safety, maintenance, construction, and you know our locality with Prince George. I'm pro-business. It creates jobs. It diversifies our tax base. We're concerned about BRAC. We know we have major issues that would be approached there. But we thank you and appreciate you coming out this evening.
Thank you.
And I wish you good luck.
Well, thank you for that.